Hey everybody, Bob here, Wrenching with Bob. Installation of the right fork. Don't get these goofed up. The right and the left look pretty darn similar. So we're going to insert this up, and you're gonna have to line this up with what's going on up top at the forks. Basically, I'm just spreading this guy by turning the screwdriver in that slot while I'm lifting the fork up in there. Now the cap is almost out, peeking out. What you want sticking out is you want the whole top of it sticking out of the fork holder, along with this portion of the gold part right down to the line. And the line should be showing, but just peeking out from the top. Yeah, I've probably got another millimeter or so to go. So what this looks like up here is this. Right, so we've got the silver cap, and then we've got a little bit of the gold showing, and just peeking out is that line. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten up these pinch bolts to 19 Newton meters. So I'm going to take a little of the slop out of there. There's some hand tight stuff going on there. Alright, so those guys are at least hand tight. Alright, there's 19 Newton meters. Then we're going to go up top, and we're not going to tighten down this pinch bolt yet. This is super important that this order of operations gets done right. The cap has to be screwed on and torqued correctly before this pinch bolt does, because the pinch bolt is actually going to be squeezing the outside tube cylinder, and it would you'd be working against that and probably crushing some stuff in terms of threads and things. So we'll turn the handlebars one way, and they want to work their way back the other way. And then, there we go. And now we're just going to tighten this guy down. Alright, here we go. So now we get to try to estimate what... Alright, I think that we're going to come back and we're going to do this final pinch bolt up here to 19 Newton meters. And this is with a T40. And there's 19 Newton meters. Now the right fork is completely installed. Next task is to take this partition and just rotate it into place. It takes a little finagling, but not much. Just try not to stress out the brake lines too much in doing it. Now that that's in place, we've got two bolts to put up back in here, and these are T30s, and I don't have a torque spec for them, and it's to a plastic component, so I'm not going to tighten them terribly tight. I'm going to leave that a little loose so that I can get the next one in place. And well, there's a story to be told. Unfortunately, and maybe it's because of 750 versus 850 kind of matters, where the bolt is right there is not the right spread for these forks, and there's a hole next to it, to the inside. You can see that there's two holes there and two holes on the other side. So these go to the inside holes. Alright, again, those bolts are going into plastic, so I'm not going crazy tight on that. Make sure that these brake lines are still in their little clips and housings and things. This is the ABS line coming here. Here's the brake line coming here. This guy will eventually get attached down here, and I'm going to wait on doing this The reason I'm going to wait on doing that is, even though that came out sort of the next in order would be to put that back on, the fender will actually be easier to put on as the final product with that off. So next in line here is putting this right caliper on. In theory, I could put the wheel in, install the wheel, and then put the calipers on. I'm going to go ahead and put one caliper on because ultimately, just because I want this to be symmetric when I make a video for just removing the front wheel and putting the front wheel back on, that looks like it was done sort of all at the same time, and that there wasn't any funny business going on. These big boys, these are T50s. These are what hold the caliper onto the fork. And I'm going to put a little blue thread lock on these guys as well. So that's done. Alright, so the caliper being bolted onto the fork. This is a T50 and it's 38 Newton meters is the torque spec. Hand thread these guys on here so I can feel them going in, not cross-threaded. One point of note here, I'm actually not going to tighten these down yet. I'm going to leave them just barely hand snug. The reason I'm going to do that is there is a little bit of play in the caliper to the fork, and that means that there could be a little bit of an angular change, like this or like this, depending upon how those get torqued down, how they get seated on the fork. And if that gets seated in a way that's sort of contrary to the way that the rotor goes in there and the way that the wheel is fitting in there through its axle, then you're going to wind up rubbing sort of badly, and you won't have good seated brakes. So because I took this caliper off, probably the right thing to have done would have been to put the wheel in, put the axle in. Now that's all bolted down, that's not going anywhere. Then when you put the caliper on second, you wind up with the caliper seating to the rotor properly as it's sitting there. I think there's even a call in most motorcycle manuals for pumping the forks a couple of times at that stage of the game, so that you get the forks all lined up just perfectly. You get everything all sort of lined up, and then you've got the calipers that are going to get bolted down to the rotors.